If you want to become a normal or mediocre developer, then it's fine. But if you want to become a good developer, then you should follow this principle. Hey there, this is Gourab. Welcome back with another video of the series Learn JavaScript from Scratch, a journey to become a JavaScript developer. So in this video, today I'll be talking about function. Very interesting topic. So as I already mentioned, in JavaScript, all values other than primitive are nothing but object, okay? And every object is nothing but non-primitive data type. So function is nothing but a non-primitive data type. So today we will talk about function. So without wasting any further time, let's jump right in. So now in order to understand what is function, let me give you a very simple analogy with variable. So in case of variable, what we have seen. So it's nothing but a container which is holding or storing some value, let's say Jonas, and it has some name that is nothing but the variable name, that is first name here. So now you can reuse this variable or this container or this first name instead of writing the value that is Jonas again and again. Okay. The same way, if I look at the function, it is also having a block, but here instead of value, it is having a block of code or piece of code. It has some name, let's say my function. This is a function name, and we can reuse this set of code or block of code again and again whenever it is required. So if anyone will ask you what is function, you should reply them as function is nothing but a block of code or set of instruction or statements which perform certain task. Okay, we can reuse this number of statement, this block of code again and again whenever it is required. But how we can use it? So in order to use it, we have to call that function, or we have a term called invoke. You can use invoke. So a function is executed when it is being invoked or called. So now you might be thinking, why do we need function and how it came, right? So in order to understand that, you have to understand one principle called dry principle. So it means don't repeat yourself. If you want to become a normal or mediocre developer, then it's fine. But if you want to become a good developer, then you should follow this principle. Do not repeat yourself. Let me give you one example so that you can understand like what dry principle says. So let's say we have a problem statement, something like this, which we have already seen in the previous video, where I will give you marks as an input. You will give me the output as grade based on this following condition. So we have seen how to implement this, right, using very simple if-else statement. So you can consider this if-else statement. I mean, this is nothing but a piece of code, or you can say set of instruction or set of statement. Okay. So if I'll just run it, to verify it out, see, we are getting C because of this condition, right? It is working fine. So now this is nothing but my piece of code. Okay. So now in real scenario where you are working in real project, it may happen like this logic you need multiple times in multiple places. So now let's say you're writing 1000 or 5000 or 10,000 number of lines, okay, where you need this logic multiple times, maybe in the same file or in different file. So how we can reuse this part, okay, because this logic is same, right? Let's say I need this logic from this line. This is a line, let's say whatever, 120. I may need this logic in another line, let's say line number, let's say 550, where I will give a different input, not 55, a different input. I may need this logic, or let's say a piece of block, let's say at the line number 5000, something like that. Okay. So in that case, how I can reuse this set of instruction or this piece of code for different input. Okay. So 55 is for, let's say, this one. We may have something else for this and this. Now you will have this kind of situation again and again in different scenario. So if you are thinking like I'll take the code and write that again here, okay, and put a different value into it, and this is how I will do, okay, then you are wrong. You are not following dry principle. So what drive principle or do not repeat principle says, once you have the logic written, you should not write it again and again. You should reuse it. And that is how function came basically. This function will help you to reuse this piece of code. So now you think, if I'm not a good developer, if I'll not follow drive principle, if I'll write this section again and again from different line, in that situation, how difficult it would be in terms of maintenance? Do you feel it will look good? Not at all, right? So we will see how we can create a function and we'll reuse this piece of code or set of instruction or block based on different input instead of writing this again and again from different line. Okay, so that's what we will see. So before that, first of all, we have to know how to write a function, like the syntax. So first I will talk about all these things like the syntax, different part of function, and then finally we will implement this part. So first let me just comment this part for now. Okay, we will be talking about function, let's say. So don't you think it's a very interesting topic? Yes, it is. So in order to create a function, here is the syntax. So first you have to write function. Okay, you can see it is nothing but a keyword which we have already seen. So now we have to give a name to this function, like name to that container or block, which is nothing but an identifier. And we have seen all the rules how to write an identifier, right? You cannot write anything in identifier. So this name should be meaningful. You cannot write anything. So you will understand what this part is doing. It is giving you grade, right? So you can write very simply get grade from marks. Okay, it is very easily understandable like what it is doing. Get grade from marks. And then you will write something like this. Open and close first bracket. And then you will write a block. It is nothing but a block which is enclosed by curly braces. So this is a keyword. This is an identifier or name of the function. And here is where we will receive arguments. I will show you. And this is nothing but the scope or block of this function. So whatever we will write here, this is nothing but my definition for this function. Okay. So I will show this later. Let me show you a very simple one. Let's say I want to sum two numbers. Okay, let me show that first and then I will implement this logic. So if I want to show sum of two numbers, so I'll create a very simple function. Let's say sum, and I will write something like this. And here I will take two numbers, as I mentioned, sum of two numbers. Let's say it is number 1 and number 2. Okay, and here I will write, let's say I will taking a variable which is equal to number 1 plus number 2, and I will return sum. So if I write return, that means here is the end of the function. Now the control will go out of this function with the value sum. So here I have declared sum using var keyword. That means what is the scope of sum? It is local to this function. As I mentioned, variable created by var keyword is function scope. Okay. So now if I'll console, let's see, are we getting a number or not? You can say nothing is happening. Okay, because we have only defined that function, but we haven't called it, right? I told you in order to execute the function, we have to call it. How we can call it? Very simple. We'll just write the name of the function. So we are trying to call it, and then we have to pass the value. Okay, we can see it is taking two values, so we have to pass those two values. Let's say I'm taking 5 and 6. I'm passing two values. This argument is called actual argument, which we are passing, and this argument is called formal argument. Okay, which is receiving, like num1 will receive 5 and num2 will receive 6, and then sum will perform, and finally it will give you the result of sum in return, which is, let's say I am storing as result. And if I'll now console the result, then I should be getting the sum of number 1 and number 2. Let's see. Perfect, we are getting the right result, right? So now if I want to reuse it, let's say somewhere line 550 for different input, I will, let's say I'm passing 10. okay, and I cannot have same variable here. Let's say I'm writing just trace for now. Let's see, we are getting 11, that is what we calling from this line, and we are getting 16 which we are calling from this line. You can see we are not writing this piece of code, or you can say set of instruction, right? Instead of that we are calling it. So that is what drive principle says, and that is main purpose of function. So now our next job would be try to put this set of instruction in function so that we can reuse this block instead of writing it again and again. So for that, let me just comment it. I hope you got the idea of function, how to use it, how to call it, what is called definition, formal argument, actual argument. So now let's try to implement this logic, which is the get grade from marks, right? Okay, let me just uncomment this part. Just for now I am removing this part, so I can understand what is the input of this setup instruction. Input is marks. I'll just write here marks because this is what I will receive when someone will call me. And then I need result. Okay, let me just declare result like this, and next I'm having couple of if else block. Let's do one thing, just copy it and paste it. Just try to uncomment this part. So let me just make the indentation proper. Okay, that's it. So now based on the condition we are storing result, so what we should return from here, we should return result. Let's write that, return result. At the end of this calculation, finally we will be returning the result, which is nothing but the grade. So you can write grade as well. Okay, that makes sense. So that is how I think you should write meaningful name while writing variable. Let me just write grade. So now let's say I want to use this piece of code from line 550. How I can do it? Very simple. Just we need to call it or invoke it. Invoke is a better term to use. So in order to call it, first I have to write the name of the function, and then I have to pass the marks, which is the input. Let me pass 55 here, and whatever I will get, let me just console it. So if I run it, you can see we are getting C, which is the right result, right? Because now marks is receiving 55 from the actual argument, and it is giving grade as C. So now let's say I have to use the same piece of code from 5000, okay, with a different value. So let's say I am passing something like, let's say 90, and if I run it, see we are getting A, okay, because it is above 80. Now if I will call it again and again, we will get different value because of different input. If I write 75, so that is the main purpose of function. Like you can reuse a piece of code or block or set of instruction again and again, and you can call it from any situation, from anywhere with different input, and you will get the right output. So now I hope the question is clear to you. Why do we need function? So first thing, we have seen the reusability. Okay, what is the other thing? So functions provide better modularity for your application and a high degree of code reusing. So code reusing we have seen. What about providing better modularity? What modularity mean? So let's say you are writing 10,000 lines of code. Okay, so within that 10,000 lines of code, you may have written multiple logic. Okay, so one logic, let's say something like that. So you can create a function like that, okay, which will be taking care of that logic, and you can call that function from another file. Okay, you can put this function in other file or something like that, so that what happened, the number of lines in one file will be reduced, because now we are creating function and we are calling that function from other file. So that is what called modularity. So because of modularity, it will be very easy to maintain your code. It will be very easy to read and understand what you have written. So that's all about function. But in JavaScript, we have another way of creating function. Okay, that is called function expression. So we have to understand what is the difference between statement and expression. So in the next video, I'll be talking about the different way of creating function and the difference between statement and expression. That's all. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video. Take care. Tata. Bye bye.